Antonius asks, when stating that one cannot attain sanctity outside of the church's mysteries, papists often refer to their saints, miracles, and incorrupt relics. How should one respond to this? I don't think we have to necessarily become, super polemical and antagonistic and say, well, I don't, that's all fake and foreign and all the rest. We certainly as Orthodox can never comment in a positive way and say, oh yeah, these are incorrupt relics because God favored them and they're saints, or these are miracles or real miracles and all the rest. All of that's going to be, from an Orthodox perspective, we're going to stand simply at the very least with agnosticism and skepticism. And depending on what we're talking about, because there are examples of, according to the patristic analysis that's been made by different people, and it's very clear in some instances, there's grave delusion among those that are called saints, contemporary Catholicism called saints. And I'll just give you one example. You can go back to a live stream we did when the Pope blessed same-sex couples. Same-sex couples were blessed as couples. They received a blessing, and he wrote that encyclical. We did a live stream on that. If you want to go to Orthodox Ethos, you can see it. In the last section of the live stream, we presented about 6 or 7 major saints, considered saints by the Roman Catholic Communion in the last 300, 400, 500 years, who were over the top, just unbelievable zealots for the papacy, to the point where they said things like, even if I forget the quote now, I'm not quoting it, so I'm not trying to quote now because I don't remember the exact quotes, but the sentiment was something like, even if the Pope is the devil himself, we're still going to do obedience. And some of these saints, like Saint Catherine of Siena, have spoken about Christ and their experience with Christ in ways that are so sensual and so outlandish from an Orthodox patristic perspective that we can say with certainty that this is delusional. It's like absolutely unbelievably bizarre and not of God, right? Because it is never remotely anything like that has ever been witnessed to by any Orthodox Christian saint in 2,000 years. And it would be seen always as delusional. Like, that would not be embraced. Her fleshly, expressions of sentimental love and all the things that you see, and I don't remember the details now, but that whole exchange and the way that it's spoken about is just so beyond the pale that you can say this is absolutely not of God, right? This is not blessed. So there's certain things that we can unequivocally come back and say, well, no, these things are delusional. They're not even on the realm of Christian experience. I mean, the way they spoke about the Pope, those 6 or 7 saints, is delusional. It's utterly spiritual delusion. And so that's, I would say, if you get into the discussion, you want to say, well, this is how what I would say first. I'm not really going to speak about things I have no experience of, right? Because that's just a basic epistemological thing, right? We're not going to speculate, but we can certainly say these things. Francis of Assisi, for instance, praying to be like Christ crucified and getting the stigmata and everything, trying to imitate Christ, like physically imitate Christ, like as Christ did this, we do the same. I send the apostles. Everything about that stance is unheard of among Orthodox saints. That kind of imitation, for instance, was never done, has never been done by any saint in the church 2,000 years. Nobody supposes that we're going to have a literal, material, physical, in this world imitation of Christ as Christ, right? I want to be crucified too. I want to have the stigmata. That whole desire itself would have been rejected by a spiritual father. If Francis of Assisi had come to an elder on Mount Athos, he would have said, utterly reject this desire. It's not of God. We don't imitate Christ and the saints like that. There's only one Christ. There's only one saint. Pick your saint. And they're not repeatable, literally repeatable, trying to imitate them to the letter. And so there's certain things that we've seen, and that, with little study actually on our part, at least in my experience, has not been massive Orthodox analysis of this, but they just jump off the page as beyond the pale, and they're delusional. And so we can never say, oh yeah, this is something akin to Orthodox saints. As far as incorrupt relics go, there can be incorrupt relics that are not of God, that are not witnessing to sanctity. In and of themselves, we do not consider them without any support from the whole life as signs of sanctity, deification. Together with the life, together with the Orthodox faith and teaching and the life, then these things can be seen as the fruit of holy life. But we have, for instance, many experiences have been written down and passed on to us over the years in Greece, where all the relics are exhumed in Greece. Like I don't think anybody ever remains in the grave in Greece. It's just the way it is in Greece. Everybody after 3 to 7 years, or maybe 10 years or more, maybe there's some exceptions, but 99% of the time when I was there as a priest, we would go and say prayers over the relics when they were exhumed, and they were put in the ossuary, and the bones were put in boxes. And then eventually many of the bones were put down into the ossuary, into the ground, and the skull was kept. And so that's the way it's done on Mount Athos. That's the way it's done all over Greece. That's just the way it's always been done. And so we see relics all the time, like literally all the time. Thousands upon thousands of people are exhumed probably every few months, right, in Greece. And so there are relics that are incorrupt, that are not blessed, right? They're blackened, they're darkened. They might not be darkened, but they're not blessed. In fact, there's stories of people who cursed a priest, for instance, and their hand was incorrupt until the prayers were read over it, and then put back in the grave, and then they were dissolved. So the point I'm trying to make here is not that that's what they their relics are necessarily. I don't know. I can't speak to what those relics are and what God has done, but I can say that in and of itself, it's not a proof that we have sanctity, because there's been many cases where they're not considered saints, and yet the relics are partially corrupt or incorrupt, and then they're put in the grave, and then they eventually decompose. So there's signs of the life going along with the relics, and then also the relics themselves. There's oftentimes in the Orthodox experience a beautiful aroma that comes out of relics, even those that are not incorrupt. There's certain signs about the relics that point to sanctity. So we see this as a pattern. 2,000 years, we've seen a pattern of because the Orthodox Church generally exhumes the bodies, and so they've seen the relics over thousands of years, and they know this saint had this saint had that. There's a pattern. All these saints, they have certain things that their relics, the color, the aroma, all these things are God's way of saying this was a holy person. And not just like saying it, but the Holy Spirit dwelt in this person. The Holy Spirit sanctified. There's a literal impact on the body, the flesh, the bones of a human being that has the Holy Spirit dwelling in them. It transforms them, and you have foretaste already of the general resurrection, pointing to the general resurrection. So again, just because they say they're saints, and just because they say they have incorrupt relics, none of that really is definitive or conclusive as to whether they are true saints of God or whether they're true relics and incorrupt.